Welcome to It's About Time, where we are digging deep in the Word of God so that we become strong men and we cannot be deterred from untruths. So, we're studying tonight Genesis chapters 46 through 47. If you have been following us and you've been able to um, join us, then you know the word has been so deep. And tonight we will continue to go deeper, starting with chapter 46. This is a time where Jacob is going to Egypt along with all his family. So we are here with Israel, also known as Jacob, right? After he has spoken to his other sons and they're letting him know that Jacob is alive and well, Israel's taking everything he has. He stops in Beersheba and makes a sacrifice. And this is just as his father Isaac and grandfather Abraham had done. Amen. So, this is also something that Jacob is doing as well, because it's like you tell your families, they tell their families, and here we are. And this is such a lesson for us as to how, uh, this part of the generation, that of sacrificing, of worshiping God, we want to keep and pass that on to our families. So here in verse 2 is very powerful and beyond. And God spake unto Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. Now, to be in the place where God speaks, to listen, to answer, verses 3 through 4. And he said, Good evening. Um, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will make thee a great nation. I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again. This is important for Jacob to hear. Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. And God does answer us. Can we visualize Israel having the reservation going to Egypt when when we know that God called him and his forefathers that Canaan would be the land that he would give them, he has given them. And so, and also that he would not be able to count his descendants. So that is not just something that has been spoken, something that's in the vision, but something that Jacob believed in, just as his fathers had, and getting closer to seeing this. And these scriptures, God does not always tell us the journey we will have to take to get there. We know we've been living for a minute. God does not always do this. Good evening, Lady Lynette. What God confirms here, I may not be well with the comments, I'm going to try. What God confirms here, as it should be a confirmation in our spirit, is He will go with him and He will bring him back. That's a lot. And so God tells him to not have any fear. God reassures that all will be well, because if we can admit and be honest, sometimes that's what we want to know. We want to know that all will be well. God also tells Jacob that his son Joseph will see him after 20 years of Jacob believing him to be dead. Now, God knows how to bring comfort. So, thinking about one of the things as we pray more, talk less, but believe that even when our words are not comfort, the Lord is our comfort. Now, Jacob is not a young man, he's about 130 years old, and it is at least 131 hours traveling by foot from Beersheba to Goshen. I'm gonna say Goshen, Egypt. Okay, don't forget Goshen is in Egypt, and it's like the borderline, the Nile, coming out of Canaan. So just to give us a visual of how close it is. I love maps. Verse 5, and Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, remember now, Pharaoh has given them wagons. So the father, their little ones, the son's little ones, and their wives, and the wagons Pharaoh has provided for them. Sister Trudy mentioned last night about the wagons that Jacob has given. Um, but here we are in verse 6, and they took their cattle and their goods, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him. So we'll hear in the verses that it may seem kind of redundant of mentioning this, but it's so important. Oh my goodness, to it's about time, and how once we get further in the word, it's gonna, when we start thinking about the seed, the stars, being able to count them, the sand, the dust, and this is why we continue to hear about Jacob, his sons, their wives, their children. Wow, Jacob was all in to bring everyone. He was all in. Now, one of the things our leader of 21st century, Lynette, talks about is having skin in the game. Jacob had skin in the game to bring everything he had, this livestock. No one will be left behind, no one will be vulnerable in Canaan. This action exhibits Jacob's faith. Yeah, yeah. Are we all in? Every fiber of our being. Huh. Do we trust God like this? Verses 8 through 27, we're going to go through a document of Israel's sons. I'm not going to mention all the names, but we're going to get further, and some of the names are definitely going to stick out. But Israel's bringing, of course, has sons, their sons and daughters, right? We don't forget about our daughters. And we're going to go through them with his children, with Jacob's children. So Reuben had 4 sons, Simeon had 6 sons, Levi had 3 sons. And I just want to point out that Levi, the Levites, Levitical priesthood, it's gonna that generation will be very instrumental once we get further into our priesthood and Moses and that. Judah had 5 sons, and 2 of them had actually died before the journey to Egypt. Judah also had 2 grandsons. Issachar had 4 sons, and then we have Jacob's daughter Dinah. Zebulun had 3 sons. Gad had 7 sons. Asher had 4 sons and 1 daughter and 2 grandsons. Joseph had 2 sons, and Benjamin had 10 sons. Dan had 1 son, and Naphtali had 4 sons. That is a lot of offspring coming with Jacob, and that doesn't even include their wives just yet. Verse 26, all the souls which are the offspring, because it definitely, this chapter intertwines souls, which to me, and that my opinion, just my opinion, is near and dear to our heart, saying souls, even though we know it's generation, we know it's Jacob's offspring. And these are all the ones that came from him, from his loins. Besides Jacob's wives and sons. So that the total was 76, which we're going to get into further. Verse 27, and the sons of Joseph which were born him in Egypt were 2 souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70. So the total of Jacob's family coming to Egypt was 70. Whoa. Verse 28, and he sent Judah before him unto Joseph to direct his face unto Goshen, and they came in the land of Goshen. Send Judah. Judah's name meant praise. Jacob sent him to go forth. He also was the one who, remember on our study, well, I'm talking to you as if I hope you were tuned in last night. It's our study, which you can watch the replay, Sister Trudy, where Judah stood up and said he would be the one to sacrifice when Joseph revealed himself to the brothers. So he's sending Judah, Jacob is sending Judah. And so here we are where Judah will go to Joseph to get directions on where they're going, on the area that they will settle in, Goshen. Okay. Verse 29, and Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, to Goshen, and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. This part is very emotional because again, remember 20 years. And Jacob, because of the bloody shirt, the bloody garment coming back from the brothers, assumed he was dead. So what and then on Joseph's end, what an emotional time. So just if we can imagine the encounter with our children, or if I don't have children, but the people I love, the youth that I love. Right, what a family reunion. The ones that I love like a child, and I have some youth that I love like a child. We can imagine, could they even imagine a reunion of such a sort? To think about, of course, there's going to be tears. We know that the Lord bottles up our tears because that's how much He cares for us. But it's important for us to cry. And honestly, I don't know how you feel, but for me to know that there are men that cry when we're in such a time and period where it's like, oh, homie, if you cry, you're not down for the cause. You're not down. But oh, I love this. As strong as Joseph was, as an organizational leader that he was, he recognized the moment of emotion. And I think that's, to me, stands out. That's where I'm meeting men who it's like have this, like, I'm a boss. I need you to cry. I need you to do something. Now Joseph knew that his father loved him, but to be in this moment of not knowing if you're being in this moment of not having not seen your father, and until the brothers came for food, that's when he knew that he was alive. So all 20 years is time. Oh my goodness, only God can do such a reunion because of the obedience. Verse 30, and Israel said unto Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. Jacob can now die in peace because he has seen his favorite son, Joseph. And we can even visualize that. And it's okay because if you have not had someone in your life that you haven't seen, I think about, even it hasn't been 20 years, but our soldiers, families that long for and do not know if their loved one has been killed in war, and being able to see their face after, even if it's 7 months, that is a lot. So we can visualize Israel giving God glory, not only for Joseph being alive, but where he is in his life, he saved them. My God. Whew. We may know that people can't move forward. And thinking about today, there are people that we know that they cannot move forward because of loss. They would not even be able to comprehend to do what Joseph did, how he led, how he allowed God in interpreting dreams. They're stagnant because of loss, because of heaviness. So to God be the glory. Verse 31, and Joseph said unto his brethren and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh and say unto him, right, to be ready to die. He was ready to die. My brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. Verse 32, and the men are shepherds, for the trade hath been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herd and all that they have. Now, Joseph he will be the point of contact. He is the point of contact for his father and brothers, right? Because he wants to make sure that they are also safe, and we're going to find out why. Now, he lets Pharaoh know that the brothers are shepherds. That's what he wants the brothers to be able to tell Pharaoh when Pharaoh asks. Joseph's family is not a stranger to adapting in a new land, but rules are important. Policies and procedures are important when your neck is on the line for your people. We may have had instances where we vouch for someone with a job and weren't on time and they didn't do their job, and it was us, it was our neck. Verse 33, and it shall come to pass when Pharaoh shall call you and shall say, here we go, what is your occupation? Verse 34, that ye shall say, the servant's trade hath been about cattle from our youth even until now, both we and also our fathers, that ye may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. So interesting fact here for the Egyptians we're hearing about. So Joseph had to prepare the brothers on how to speak, your servants, on when to speak, on letting them know what's appropriate to tell him about what they do for a living. Um, Now, with this answer, with the right, they could stay in the land. The Egyptians couldn't stand shepherds because they were more agricultural than the Israelites. The Israelites were into killing, of course, killing. We have the animals; they have the animals for sacrificing. That was not how the Egyptians rolled. They did the harvesting. They were cool with that. And it wasn't that they didn't eat meat; they just were not big on sacrificing animals. Now, just like Joseph was used to helping his family get settled in, he had to even help them to make sure they were protected and even respectful, I want to say, in this land. And it made me think about all of that. It makes me think about and having, and even for us having our comfort is that, oh my goodness, Jesus settles us. He will settle us if we allow him to, and he will make sure we are protected. And here we are in chapter 47. Joseph's family settles in Goshen. Here we have Joseph going to Pharaoh because we just left where he's schooling his brothers on how to answer Pharaoh when they are called by Pharaoh to be questioned. Pharaoh is now waiting, is in the process of waiting to meet Jacob, and so they're settled and everything. They have Joseph is letting Pharaoh know the situation right now. He's letting them know, yes, bro. He's letting them know how they roll in Egypt, and he's letting Pharaoh know. I've let them know they're getting settled and they're now in Goshen. Joseph, well, when he comes to Pharaoh, he's not alone. He brings some of his brothers and five more of family members. And I want to say these could be nephews that he's bringing with him to Pharaoh. Verse 3, and Pharaoh said unto his brethren, what is your occupation? Here we go. And they said unto Pharaoh, thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our father. So this is not, I love what Sister Lynette says, she's not new to this. She's true to this. They are true to being shepherds. Also in verse 46, Joseph had already schooled them on how to respond. So here they are in chapter 46. We're just in verse 4. Joseph has schooled them, which was our last chapter. Verse 4, they said, moreover unto Pharaoh, for to sojourn, this is Black History Month, in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pasture for their flocks. We know they came because of the famine. For the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants, I like that, Sister Trudy, they are legacy shepherds. Let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Joseph had one of the highest positions in the land, but his father, brothers, and family still had to go and get permission from Pharaoh to be in Egypt. Yeah, yeah, because I was like, Lord, what are you saying here? Joseph was already the man. He was the man. But it's like, wait, already in Egypt there's a famine. So Pharaoh has to make sure 70 people just came in here to eat some more food. And the famine is what caused them to come in the beginning. So they had to keep this in mind. Um, and they were in a place where they were already where their livestock did not have food. Verse 5, and Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. Well, they're here. I'm glad they're here. Verse 6, the land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land, make thy father and brethren to dwell in the land of Goshen. Let them dwell. And if thou knowest any men of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle to come up. So Pharaoh has Joseph's family in the best part of Egypt, which is Goshen. Wow. Wow. They're in the best part. In a famine. A place that their livestock will have food to eat. Pharaoh also sees an opportunity for himself, for anyone in Joseph's family who has a special gift so that they can be over his cattle. Yes, an opportunity. When a famine, with a famine, his family needed to pull their weight. Now, Proverbs 18 and 16 came to mind that it says, a man's gifts makes room for him. Gifts are given from God. So my question, what gift do we have that can bless the kingdom? Because the way that the brothers came to Pharaoh and answering him, it opened the door. Because even with the Egyptians um, not couldn't stand shepherds in that way, there's still a place for them. And that's a thought for us. There is a place for us in the kingdom. It will never be to where we don't have anything to do in the kingdom. We make ourselves useful. The Bible tells us to work while it's day, because no man will know the hour. Jesus is coming. And so here we are. Jacob meets Pharaoh, and Jacob blesses Pharaoh. That really did something. Just in my devotion time, and I love this so much because this Pharaoh and the pharaohs after were considered to be a god to some of them, to some Egyptians. And even just as we go along further, we'll see the role in with the Israelites. But Pharaoh recognized the God in Jacob. Can people recognize the God in us in a famine, in an inflation? Can they recognize the God in us? Pharaoh asks Jacob. Pharaoh asks Jacob his age. He tells him he's 130 years old. Look how much time has went by, and that he's been on a journey. Another thing that Jacob doesn't do, even though Jacob knew that this place where he was, Goshen, Egypt, was a temporary, he did not down Egypt. He did not say anything that would He did not say anything to make Pharaoh think um, he like he had to do something for him, or he was not appreciative. And I think that was very interesting in saying, and Jacob saying he's been on a journey. So Pharaoh didn't even get Pharaoh didn't even hear that God is, said this to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that you're going to be a great nation. Okay, no, why would he say that? Not to Pharaoh, not at this time. Pharaoh, no, 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 no. Yes. And so Pharaoh has commanded, as we talked about in verse 11. So, and Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, and the best land in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And we will hear more about Ramses later on. Right now, Ramses is a prosperous land. Now, verse 12, and Joseph nourished his father and his brethren and his father's household with bread according to their family. So Joseph is here rationing the food within his family. So, point, pause. Egypt has food. Remember how 7 years Jacob stores food. There wasn't food everywhere, but where Jacob had, he was in control of the food. Verse 13. And so here we are, so as I just mentioned that, and there was not bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. Now, this famine is beyond Egypt. People are weak, passing out. Now, in verse 14, Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in Canaan, and this was the money from the corn that people had bought. Joseph brought that money into Pharaoh's house. Joseph was an excellent administrator, which we've heard about. He is. And the money people gave for foods, he brought to Pharaoh. He didn't keep any of that money. He was a money manager. He was a money management matters man. Verse 15, and when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. The money is gone, so what are we going to do, Joseph? How are you going to help a brother out? You want us to die in front of you? You see us? We hungry? Ooh, thought for us. God is the only one today who will sustain us. Verse 16, and Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fails. Verse 17, and they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for their horses, and for the flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses. And he fed them with bread for their cattle for that year. It's coming up the second year. Joseph is so solution oriented. Wow. So the Egyptians, he had them give up their livestock for food if they did not have the money. And we know, we already read that money was failing, as today we have what they call an inflation for people, not for God's people. Okay. The people brought their livestock and they were fed for the year. Verse 18, when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year. Money's gone and we're just in the second year. And said unto him, we will not hide it from my lords, how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. Stop the press. So here we are. Jacob, Joseph, my bad, already had them give them their herds or livestock for food, but here they are. They're at a place. The money's gone. There's no more money. It failed before. It was leaving before. Now it is gone. But they've also uh, given their livestock away for food. Yes, he was a forecast strategist. Yes, yes. Come on, Sister Trudy, you better come through. Oh my goodness. So, and they can't hide it because it's like saying, we will not hide it from our Lord. But Joseph knows he's the smartest man right now. He's the smartest man in Egypt. He knows that they don't have anything except for their land, except for their body. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And their lands. Verse 19. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes? Here we go. Nobody knows the trouble they see. Both we and our land, buy us and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. And give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. So the second year is here, just the second year out of 7. And the people coming to Jacob, Joseph, my bad. They come into him again. Woe is me. Of course, I mean, there's a reason they're coming to him. It's not, well, it's me. They're in the situation that they're in. And we are today where we're surrounded by, could be family, could be people that we know that are in dire situations. And it is a time, we can reflect and asking the Father for the best way to help if he's called us to do that. Now, the people here are offering themselves as slaves, and not just slaves, but slaves to work the land and then to have seed so that the land will not be a land that looks like a famine as well. Okay, verse 20. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. So we're learning stories, and it's about time of, we're starting now in this period where we are in Genesis, where, oh, this is how Pharaoh gets to be so powerful, and the pharaohs that come after him. Okay, this is how this is going to happen. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil the word because I want us to be here on the YouTube in 21st century. But Pharaoh now owns the land. Joseph was an amazing strategist, as we have mentioned. Joseph planted the people. So they were not just in one place, they were planted throughout the borders. And I hope you have an opportunity to look at the map of Egypt connected to the Goshen and connected to Ramses, to see the connection with, to see where people were planted, were they by the Nile, because they're going to have seed. So this is how Joseph planted the people throughout the borders of Egypt. Verse 22. Wow, this is pretty. The land of the priests. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. So the land that the priests had, Joseph did not buy that, did not get that land. And we're going to find out, for the priests had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them. Wherefore they sold not their lands. So we see here already, this is the first time we're hearing where the priests come in mind. These were not God's priests; these were Pharaoh's priests in the land. But they still had, they could be where they were praying to other gods, and to where Pharaoh believed that they were doing God's work, little G's work. Okay, but they still had an agreement. They still had a covenant with Pharaoh, and their land was protected. because and Pharaoh already provided a portion to them, and they always had their portion. So we're going to hear about the priests. We're going to hear about how the Lord has, even with Moses, made provisions for them. We're going to hear about Levitical priests further in our study. So, verses 23, Joseph gives the people seed for the land, and they're going to till this land. They're going to fertilize this land so that the seed will grow into harvest. Now, verse 24, Joseph continues in talking to them that they will give Pharaoh 20% of their harvest, and the rest is for their family. Wow, I feel like I'm in a money matters session, Sister Trudy. Joseph was fair in his dealing and fair with the people. 20% could have been bigger. That was a fair. Now Joseph makes a law. So in verse 26, and I'm just mentioning the 20% that they're going to give Pharaoh, but in verse 26 is actual law. And again, this does not include the priests. Verse 27, and Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. Verse 28, and when Joseph lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, wow, Egypt becomes the first super, wow, that's so true. So the whole age of Joseph was 147 years. Now here we are after the famine. It's been 17 years that Jacob has been in Egypt. Now I want to point out, because we did read earlier that Pharaoh had commanded that Israel had possessions, but here they still have possessions. And if they multiplied in body and human form, if they more human form, they have possessions, so they were able to buy land. If Jacob came to Goshen, a thought, with 70 family members, and now his family has increased greatly, can we imagine that there could be at least 100 of them? Just a thought. The growth is just the beginning of millions of what God has promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the promise continues. Verse 29, Israel knows that he is getting close to dying and calls Joseph to let him know he doesn't want to be buried in Egypt. Absolutely not. Period. Jacob hopes that Joseph has a grace for him and would honor him. I thought of how Jacob chooses Joseph to be the one that he knows he can trust, and keeping the agreement with him to take him out of Egypt when he dies. Jacob asks that Joseph puts his hand under his thigh as an agreement to his request. Verse 30, but I will lie with the fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said. Now, Jacob is specific here and wants to be buried, which we've heard even with Abraham and the covenant they had there with the plots that we've studied. But if you haven't studied, make sure you go back 21st century videos in the beginning, take a look. And that's where he wants to be, where the father grandfather is. Now we end this chapter with Joseph swearing, again, confirmation, swearing to Jacob, and he bows, and Jacob bows in worship. I love that Jacob is such a worshiper, and as well as it should be for us, is to worship all the time. Worship when things are well, especially well with our soul. Is it? And the question tonight is it well with our soul? Don't forget to share the videos, and don't forget to share the link for this channel. God bless you. Stay tuned. Tomorrow night, we're going to be further because it is about time.